I've been working as a crime scene cleaner for almost 15 years now. Last week I was hired to clean up what seemed to have been an apparent suicide. A man, reportedly 30 years old, had carved a hole into a door by repeatedly hitting with a plank which he had ripped off of his bed and then slammed his eye onto a sharp spike or a stake that was created by the door. His body was not discovered until over a month later when his landlord sent a wellness check to his house after he had not paid his rent for over a week. His payments were always on time. And he had also failed to respond to any of the landlord's texts or phone calls. Poor guy didn't have any family or friends who could check up on him, which I guess is another fact that points towards what happened to him being a suicide. The job itself was not too bad. Well, at least it was not as bad as most cases like this are. Thankfully, the door was already removed, and the man's corpse had been sent off for an autopsy just in case of a possible homicide. While there weren't any signs of a forced entry, the man's bedroom, which he was found in, had been totally trashed. A desk had been flipped onto its side with a few books, a laptop, and a cup of coffee laying on the floor beside it. The coffee that was spilled from the cup stained a small circular off-white rug that lay in the middle of the room. The color of the stain matched the color of the rotting bodily fluids that flowed from the man's final resting place to the rug. The man's bed, too, had been flipped upside down and had one of its legs removed, which, as I previously mentioned, was used to carve a hole into the bedroom door. The room itself did not have any windows, which further increased the speed and severity of his decomposition. The bodily fluids and pus, which ranged in color from dark brown to yellow, had leaked from his bloated corpse and had spread around the room in a shape that somewhat resembled a spiderweb. At the end of one of these tiny rivers of gore was a single small notebook. Most of the notebook was untouched by the rotting human remains, except for the bottom right corner of the last few pages. The journal was started a few days before the presumed date of the man's death, and did not have anything of substance written in it, at least up until around 5 pages in. Entry 1. I started hearing the knocking like an hour ago at this point. At first, the knocks were so distant from one another that I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. But now it's constant. Whoever's on the other side has been knocking non-stop without even a few second breaks for half an hour now, and it sounds like the interval between knocks is getting shorter. At this point, I think I have to intervene for a few seconds to mention that the autopsy results did not show any signs of drug use, and an entry early in the journal mentioned that the only mental illness he had was OCD, caused by childhood trauma that was caused by a break-in that led to the death of his mother. I also apologize for repeatedly referring to the man as the man, but for privacy reasons, I cannot give his name. Entry 2. It's been 5 minutes now and the knocking still has not stopped yet. In fact, it has gotten worse. Not just the speed, but also the strength at which the door is being hit. At any point now, I think they'll break the door, and I don't have anywhere to hide. Thank God my paranoid ass installed that lock. Entry 3. It's been another hour, at least I think. My computers completely stopped working a few minutes after the knocking began. The knocking has been getting even worse. The door is shaking so much that I'm impressed it has not fully fallen out of its hinges yet. Entry 4, fuck it. I'm opening the door. I've been in this fucking room listening to the knocking for God knows how long. It feels like it's been hours since I last rode in here. Entry 5. I can't open the door. First, I called out to whoever's on the other side, hoping that I could bargain with them, but I didn't get a response. I unlocked the door and tried to pull it open, but it wouldn't budge. I pulled on the doorknob with as much power as I could muster, but still, it wouldn't budge. Entry 6. I didn't think that the knocking could get worse, but somehow it did. Now, instead of distinct banging sounds that came right after each other, the knocks have turned into a single non-stop hum. Entry 7. I can't keep doing this. I think a whole day has passed. I'm breaking the door down. Entry 8. There's another door. At first, I tried to break the door down just by running into it and punching it with no success. Then I tried to break off a leg off of my desk once again with no success. But finally, I tipped my bed over and broke off a leg. I repeatedly slammed the leg into the door, slowly chipping off small chunks of wood. Before I got through the door and saw what lay on the other side, I took a deep breath. Looking through the small, lightning-shaped hole I had created, I saw the door to my bedroom just mere inches from the one I had broken through. Entry 9. There's more of them. I carved the hole I created in the first door into the circle and then started working on the second door. Once I broke through that one, I was once again met with the same white door with the brownish gold-colored doorknob. None of the doorknobs work, neither for the inside nor the outside. The knocking has not stopped yet. Entry 10. I'm 5 doors in at this point and have to contort my body and slightly climb into the tunnel I've created to continue digging. I don't understand what is happening, and I try not to think about it. If I think about it, I'll get too scared to keep going, and this is something I don't want to abandon. I think I'll get the answers on the other side. Entry 11. I think I'm on door 25 at this point, and I'm slowly running out of energy to crawl back. The next time that I go in, there will be my last, and I'll either die of starvation, exhaustion, or reach the other side. No matter what, I don't think things going back to normal is possible now. Goodbye. That's the last of his entries. I don't know what to make of any of this, so I thought that I'd post about it here in an attempt to get an answer, or at least some guidance, to what the fuck could have happened to him. Any information that you might have will be appreciated. I might not be able to respond to comments for the next few hours or so, because I'm going out on a date with my girlfriend. I just heard her knock on my door. As the sun set, I saw the first silhouettes across the field. My grandfather sat smoking and reading on the rocking chair in the back of the house. I ran to him, scared and uncertain. "There's people coming, Grandpa," I said. He flicked his cigarette on the ashtray, put down his book, and looked straight into my eyes. "Where? Who?" he asked, his clear blue eyes searching my face. "I don't know, but there's dozens of them, I think," I said. I couldn't see their faces or anything. They just looked like shadows moving across the field. He stood up quickly, knocking the ashtray off the small table to his right. Cigarette butts went flying all over the floor, and a cloud of ashes got swept up by the wind. "Where's Grandma?" he asked, his face growing grave. A crease appeared across his forehead, and he looked around quickly. "I don't know, but they're coming fast," I said. He began limping inside the house, his bad leg slowing him down. He looked out the front window and gasped. Quietly, I came up behind him and stared out at the field, covered in deep orange and red hues from the sun, covered up by clouds as day rolled into night. "We need to find Grandma right now," my grandfather said. He went to the kitchen and unlocked the safe, taking out his .223 rifle, which he mostly used to kill coyotes and foxes who hunted his chickens or attacked the baby pigs out in the barn. "I don't get what it is," I said, staring out the window. It seemed like hundreds of black spots now approached, spread out over the field. The ones closest I saw were not human at all. They walked on their hands and feet, with shining black skin stretched thinly over their bones and joints. Silver tendrils of saliva rolled down from their mouths, and every time one of them got too close to another, they would begin to snap and hiss, their sharp, serrated teeth flashing with every bite. Their eyes had the strange look of a goat's eyes, with rectangular pupils. Placed on each side of their face, it looked like a small island of light in the darkness of space. The rest of their naked bodies seemed to suck in the light, causing a slight shimmering on their reptilian skins. "Oh God, they're back," my grandfather said. "Last time they came, they killed off half the town." "Where's Grandma?" I asked, a current of anxiety running through my body now. My grandpa shook his head. "I wish I knew," he said. "When's the last time you saw her?" "She was weeding in the garden and then said it would be dark soon and she should start putting the tools away," I said, suddenly remembering. "She's probably out in the shed right now." My grandfather grabbed the gun and ran out the door, at least as much as he could run. It ended up being more of a fast, limping walk. By this point, the first of the creatures had nearly reached the front of the house. We went out the back door, looking towards the shed. I saw the light on inside, and the door wide open. "Grandma," I screamed. My grandfather jumped, then put his free hand over my mouth, holding the gun loosely in the other. "You idiot," he hissed. "Don't draw them near. Keep quiet. Do you want to die?" But it was too late. I heard growling and snapping from the front of the house and the smashing of windows and doors. Then, on all fours, a few of the abominations came running around the side of the old farmhouse, attracted by my screaming. They hopped in a strange way, their abnormally long and thin arms going between their bodies as their legs pushed them forwards in constant jumping motions. They moved fast now, much faster than me, and in the growing darkness, they seemed little more than a blur. My grandfather grabbed my hand and we ran towards the shed, slamming the door behind us. I looked back in the corner and saw my grandmother, totally oblivious to everything going on, sorting through tools and small seed containers. "Ah, we need more basil and rosemary," she said to herself. "Never have enough seeds, it seems." She looked back at us, smiling. "Have you come to help? I'm sorry to say, I'm nearly done." "No," my grandfather said, raising his gun for emphasis. "We're being attacked. You need to stay with us. Remember what killed the Kellers and the Cavendish family and their dogs and cats and cattle?" My grandmother's face went pale, and I thought she might pass out for a moment. She grabbed her chest, breathing hard. "But that was 30 years ago," she said. "How could they be back?" My grandfather just shook his head. "They're here," he said. As if on cue, someone started smashing on the locked door of the shed. Then another pair of hands joined in, and another. It sounded like a riot had broken out on the other side of the wall. My grandfather raised the gun as if to start shooting through the door. Then he checked his pocket and frowned. "Damn it, should have grabbed more ammo," he said, rifling through a few bullets in his overalls. He looked like he had grabbed a couple dozen from the safe, though even with perfect aim, that wouldn't make much of a dent in the crowd of beasts I had seen. "Go out the back door," my grandmother said. "We'll go escape to the woods. We can come out at the Jefferson house if we take the dirt trail." "Fine, fine," my grandfather said, pushing me forwards and grabbing my grandmother's hand. He looked out the side door of the shed. The beast still pounded on the front door, and I heard the wood begin to splinter and give way. "Coast is clear," he said quickly, and we ran out through the field and towards the woods. Behind us, I heard the door fall, the last rotten beams shattering as the black creatures moved inside. "What if they're already at the Jeffersons' place?" I asked my grandfather in a low tone. We ran through the corn plants, though my grandmother and grandfather couldn't move very fast. I could hear the creatures howling with rage and sniffing the air from the shed behind us. "Then we deal with it," my grandfather whispered. I heard the first heavy, booming steps as the creatures gave chase, running over the corn plants and knocking them down with a wispy, echoing sound. By the time we got into the forest, the creatures had circled us. Some had run ahead, and some followed close behind, but they kept a distance of 10 feet as if simply watching and stalking. My grandfather stopped and raised his gun. With a deafening boom, he shot at the first silhouette he saw on the trail. The bullet went high, and with a deep growl, the creature disappeared into the brush. My grandfather motioned us forward and we walked down the trail, close together in a group. Anytime he saw the slightest movement, he would shoot in that direction. One of the creatures seemed to have been hit, and on the trail, I saw black blood shining under the moonlight. Drops disappeared into ferns and prickers that surrounded the trail, and for a moment, I thought I saw eyes gleaming through the brush. Then they were gone. My grandmother reached out for my hand. "It's going to be okay," she said reassuringly, patting me. "We've survived this before. We'll make it this time." My grandfather shook his head, but he said nothing. As we got to the Jeffersons' house, I saw lights shining in every window. Hope soared in me until I saw the bodies strewn across the porch. The mother had her head ripped off. I saw a body with a blood-stained dress, the neck a mess of gore and bones. Looking up, I saw the head staged neatly on a metal fence post, the spike driving into the throat. Her eyes looked blank, her expression a mask of horror. The mouth stood slightly open, and the lips looked blue. The rest of the family lay around her, disemboweled, their eyes ripped out, the soft flesh eaten off of their faces. My grandmother pulled me to the side, looking over at my grandfather. Then she began laughing. He turned to her, confused. My pets, she said, in an insane voice. They're here for you, though they take whatever they want. Hungry work, you know. What? My grandfather asked, a certainty and bitterness crossing his eyes as he stared at his wife with distrust. I know you were sleeping with Mrs. Keller, my grandmother said, her eyes turning dark and her features savage. She grinned, showing all her teeth. My grandfather stepped back, muttering excuses and saying how it wasn't true. You killed them? He asked. And you did all this? I did what I had to protect me and my grandson from monsters like you, she said. And with a nod of her head, the creatures came out of the woods, grabbing my grandfather and dragging him away. He shot his gun, emptying the clip and blowing apart the heads of 3 or 4. But a dozen more followed from behind, hissing and biting at the air. I heard his screams and the breaking of his bones as they savaged him, biting and stomping on him, ripping at his throat and face. Soon, he disappeared into the darkness, and the last gurgling scream echoed back to us. My grandmother turned to me, her normal placid, friendly expression back on her face. Well, she said, that was quite a day. How about we go home and have some ice cream? I could really go for some ice cream. And so we turned around and left, and I never asked her about any of it. My grandmother recently died, and I found a book in the attic while cleaning out the farmhouse. It looked like it had a cover made of human skin, and in the middle it said in blood-red letters, Summoning Spells and Necromancy.